Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 2 of Luke Cage. A fantastic season. If you have not seen all of Luke Cage, and I mean all of Season 2, then do not listen to this because I will be going into spoilers. Obviously, my immediate thoughts is kind of like having just finished it. Great. I honestly think I like it more than Season 1 because I think I just feel like there were so many, oh, whoa, that's sick, that's crazy moments in this season. And I think it took some very interesting turns, especially with Luke's character, which obviously I'll dive more into spoilers later on. But it's like, it took turns I wasn't expecting. And it just like, a lot of people's stories played out in ways I had no idea they were going to play out the way they did. And I think even having my thoughts on how this season would play out, I was still surprised in a very good way. So I'll leave it at that. I highly recommend if you have not seen all of Season 2, watch it now. That's just my once again, that's my opinion. Maybe you'll watch it, you won't feel the same way. But hey, like I said, this is all just my opinion. So from this point on, I will be going into the spoilers. So do know that you have been warned. Holy shit, dude. Everything, first of all, let's talk about the fact is, they kicked it up this season with the fact is all these duos. It's like, yo, you got Luke and Misty at one point. You got Luke and Danny. You got Colleen and Misty. You even got Luke and Bushmaster. And it's like all these freaking duos and team ups. It's like, yo, I feel like that doesn't happen a lot in any other show. Like, I feel like the best comparison, maybe Daredevil and Iron Fist are the only ones that's ever really done that. Because even this is the first time Luke Cage has done it, and it did it a lot, which I really appreciate. I mean, there is a lot to break down about this season. Overarching, let's talk about Luke's story. Like I brought it up, obviously, when I was talking non-spoilers, but the direction his story took was so good because the struggles of being the hero. Because obviously, he went from the whole Carl Lucas thing to being Luke Cage, his past being an issue and stuff like that, battling Cottonmouth and once again battling his past, that being a big struggle for him in the first season. So I was curious, what would be his struggle this season? And obviously, it is being the hero, because being the hero does put you on a platform to come crumbling down, which it did before, but this is in a different regard because people hold him to such a high esteem. It's just like, oh, you're Luke Cage, you got to deal with this, things are going wrong, you need to handle that. But like I said, everyone's so quick to turn on a hero the moment they get a chance to, especially when Bushmaster kicked his ass. I love that the entire season, every time people oh yeah, didn't Bushmaster kick your ass? He's like, no, I beat him. It's like, he's like, why does everyone keep just jumping at it? It's like, well, technically, the world publicly saw one time he beat you, but there's a second time he beat you. You beat him well, I guess technically it's kind of even score by the end of it, technically speaking, throughout the entire season, because he's he gets two wins, kind of ends in a draw in some cases. So it's that, but yeah, just a struggle of what to do, trying to do the right thing. And it's something I brought up, based on the trailers, was the fact is that he would struggle being brutal. And that took an interesting turn, especially when it came to the Claire storyline. That took me by surprise. She wasn't even in a lot of this season. I was like, holy crap, I thought that'd be a big storyline this season, your relationship and stuff like that. That says a lot going forward, which is interesting. But nevertheless, it's just the fact is that, yeah, him kind of being brutal, because for him, it's yeah, that gets shit done. Doing things his way hasn't really done anything. Crime has still kind of been rampant. He's been a deterrent for now, but it's still not enough. And it just feels like he's not making enough of an impact. And so, yes, I might have to get a little scary and it might be this and that. But for him, it's just it's the only way. By being bigger and meaner and tougher, that's the only way you get people to back down. You might have to scare them, which scared Claire, because for him, he was so consumed by his own anger. It's actually something that comes up later on. Bushmaster's aunt kind of brings it up herself, being Luke and Bushmaster being so alike, which I think was such an interesting take on making them so similar, not just abilities or whatever, because obviously I'll break that down, but it's more so who they were personally, because each one was trying to fight for their own people in their own way. For him, for Bushmaster, it's yo, Harlem is his home because of everything that went down between the Bushmasters, what went down with the Stokes, between the two families and their heated past, for him, his main thing was going after Mariah. He wanted to wipe out the Stokes. That's all he wanted to be on the top, the top of the hill. So that was kind of his main goal. And so it's one of those things where it's like, and it's something interesting because his aunt was like, yeah, he at least lets all his anger out. You internalize it, which is a lot more dangerous, which could be, it's an interesting argument, especially because you are who you are. You're a man that if you get pissed, shit gets broken. And it's actually kind of an interesting thing. Like, I'll know, like, even pretty early on in the season, he loses a lot of his foundation. Like, obviously, like, the people that probably keep him the most grounded, obviously, him and Claire have their issues. Like, he scared her away with the way he'd handle things. Even the fact is that Bobby's gone because he's helping with his daughter situation, which that came up as like, whoa, you're a dad and everything. So that was kind of interesting. But like I said, those two people kind of act as a balance to him, and they're kind of gone. So I like the entire season, he is kind of a little off kilter. It's even something him and Danny talk about, which, I was like, like when him and Colleen popped up this season, I was like, that's so cool. And I love that they did a one episode thing because it does. I think it's a nice touch because obviously this is the show is Luke Cage. So it's not just about these other people. It's about like, no. Like these are these characters' stories. Like we can bring in other characters, but don't make them too much of the focus. So like Colleen got like an episode and so did Danny. I thought that was kind of a really nice touch. Obviously with Colleen, I don't know if I brought this up. I might have brought this up when I was talking about the Defenders, but it might have been something I think I learned about afterwards. But the fact is, Colleen and Misty are actually a pretty badass duo in the comic books. I want to say their name is like Double Dragon, but I'm probably like completely wrong. But they're totally a team in the comic books, and I like that they kind of like wink and nudge to that. In Defenders they did, but like this was their first push to it because where Danny was helping out Luke, you had Colleen doing the same thing for Misty, trying to get them back on kilter because obviously Misty was going through her turmoil this season because the whole fact is she's missing her arm. People at the department don't look at her the same way just because it's like, well, there's also the scarf situation. She's still coming off of that. So, and it's just kind of because everyone's treating her like I thought it was kind of the biggest asshole thing. Like criminals, bad guys, okay, of course they're douchebag, but her own people are like roasting her for missing an arm. It's like, I guess it's one of those things where it's like they're uncomfortable, so they're lashing out. They're making crude jokes just because it's like their defense mechanism, which it still doesn't change anything from them being pieces of shit for that whole situation. But it's like, man, like. But she had to set them straight, being like, yeah, this is my new norm. I got to get adjusted to it. You get adjusted to it. This is what it is. Stop trying to show me pity. I ain't asking for all that. I just came here to do my job. So leave me the hell alone. So, but that whole bar, like obviously Colleen kind of pushing her and being like, I'm not here to pity you because the fact of the matter is what you did for me and Claire blocking that blade, like, got nothing but admiration for you because the fact of the matter is. And like the whole bar scene, them kicking ass together. Obviously, it was mainly Misty at first, but then Colleen joined in when she needed to. And it's just like, look at y'all being badasses. It's also interesting, too, because Claire and Misty have a nice relationship, which is interesting. Because, I mean, obviously, you see it a little bit in Defenders as well, but it's so interesting because it's like, especially considering where they were in season 1. Obviously, Misty was kind of in her place in season 1. So it was kind of nice to see like, oh yeah, them hugging it out and being friendly. Like obviously Claire's like they're like helping her, I guess, go through her therapy and stuff like that. But I thought that was kind of such a nice little touch, so. And then your boy Danny showing up. I like what they did too, because even just in one episode, they kind of show you Danny's kind of changed a lot too. Because even Luke is like, yeah, you seem more. I forgot what the exact word he was. It wasn't focused. It was something he had said. Because basically, Danny isn't acting like his usual self. Because Danny was a lot calmer in this. Which, comparing him to season 1 of Iron Fist and, like, Defenders, like, he kind of got a lot of heat. But, like, even he's like, yeah, he's kind of gone through some changes. Which, it's something I've commented on, like, once again, my comparison, my knowledge of Iron Fist includes the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon. I've never read the comic books, so I don't know how he really is in the comic books, but comparing him between who he was in Ultimate Spider-Man, the cartoon, to who he is in like Iron Fist and Defenders, he's very hot-headed. And I also like that they kind of poke fun of him as kind of being a little bit of an idiot, specifically in Defenders, but he's definitely very hot-headed. And I think that's why he makes the perfect match for Luke in the sense of balancing Luke out, because much like Luke, he knows all about being angry. Like, that's what drove him was that anger in season 1, but it seems like he found peace to a certain degree, because it seems like he's, like I said, he's a lot more calmer, cooler, and collected. And I think that's going to be interesting because that sets up so much going forward, even for like Iron Fist being like, oh, you won't be the same Danny. Like, I don't know whether we'll see that transition into that or what, but or whether like by the time we get to Iron Fist, it's like he's already going to be like that. I don't know. We'd have to wait and see. But I'm so it's just an interesting thing, and just seeing him and Luke flowing so much better. Like, they flowed a little in Defenders, but obviously there's been a little time subsequently since then, so it's them kind of flowing back. Like, that fight when they were working together to fight, that was so sick. Especially when he was like, Patty K. Danny was like, wait, what? He's like, summons up the Iron Fist, punches Luke's hand, which Luke braced himself and sends out a shockwave. I was like, yo! I lost my shit, dude. That was so dope. I was like, that's so awesome. Freaking duo teamwork like that, dude. Because obviously this hints at it. Doesn't come about, but because it's something I was wondering, because I do know this about Danny and Luke. They do start a group known as Hero for Hire. That might be something where it's like, oh, when it's all said and done, these Marvel TV shows and stuff like that, that might be like a end result thing. Like, oh, it might be like a final thing where it's like, oh, they go into business together potentially, you know. So I don't know. I thought that's kind of a really nice thing. And like I said, that Danny's there to kind of balance him. It wasn't just Danny kind of going there himself. It's because Claire actually sent him. Like I said, it was just kind of an interesting thing of Danny trying to get Luke to realize like the stillness, like the flow. It's like, yeah, when I saw you in that fight, man, it's like, yeah, for a second, like your mind, body, and spirit were kind of all connected, and you found your flow, you know, kind of finding that stillness, which isn't really Luke's thing, but maybe eventually it can be. So I feel like amongst any of them, it's kind of a tie between him and Matt. Matt's kind of been in his hero thing a little bit longer, but even then, it is kind of interesting when you compare to who Luke is this season compared to all the other seasons. It's like season 1 of Luke Cage, even who he was in Defenders. It's like he wasn't all about like going as hard as he did this season about handling things. It's like, no, he doesn't want to hurt people. He wants to handle things the right way. That seems like, I mean, after all of his experiences, I think it's kind of made him a little more jaded in some regards, because he, you know, obviously feels like the law has failed him. So, but hands down, one of my favorite scenes is when it's like him and Danny are like, okay, we got to find the lowest rat we can, and it was like, oh, he's got an idea. The moment he said that, I was like, is it your boy Turk? And it turned out it's like, yeah, it's your boy Turk. It's like, I love that you're kind of like amongst this in like MCU, like Marvel TV show stuff here on Netflix. It's like you're kind of like the low grade scum. Like, yeah, if you need a rat in New York, it's most likely, you know, in that nearby area, Harlem, Hell's Kitchen or something, you need Turk. Well, Turk hasn't kicked it in Hell's Kitchen in a while. I think Harlem's kind of been his like ground house for a while. So I just love that whole thing. I even love him being like, yo, I know who you are, Danny Rand, man, dude. I heard about, yo, you got mixed up with Madame Gal, but she ain't someone you just mix up with easily. And it's just like, yeah. Because I even love the question, be like, yo, how do you know Danny Rand? And even like DW, which I love him this season. I love that, like, he was such a little part in season 1, but now it seems like he's playing a much bigger part, especially the way his story progresses. But like him being like when Danny summons up the Iron Fist and stuff like that, like DW's just like, that look, dude. It's like, yo, he's like Luke Cage and Iron Fist, or did he say Power Man? Which I love that that's a thing. Is even though like obviously he's merchandising off of this stuff, like selling videos to ESPN. I even love that being a thing where it's like Bobby's going to be like his manager for all the stuff that's going down. Like Nike wants to sponsor him, and obviously all that kind of like goes away later on. I even love the dude that like later on when Luke needs the money, he's like, yo, you saw the documentary dude's like, so we want you to fight you want me to fight a shark? He's like, yeah, we'll probably make that like the season finale, but first episode, like, you think you could beat a honey badger? And he's just kind of like, no, I'm not about to do this. I also love that Foggy popped up. I thought that was kind of obviously Foggy helping out with the whole cockroach situation. I got one of the actors name, the actor who played Cockroach. God, he's been in so much stuff. One notable thing being like Tommy from season 3 of Haven. He was also in Lucky Number 11. Like I said, he's been in a lot of things. I think him as Tommy from Haven is like one of my, like, because that's kind of my favorite season of Haven, and just where his story ends up being is kind of like a nice thing. And so I think that's what I kind of go to the most. But nevertheless, I'm getting off track. I do apologize. But I love his whole deal about trying to sue Luke and everything, just kind of being a piece of crap. And then Foggy's like, okay, so I know it's kind of weird this coming from me out of anybody, but maybe you should consider wearing a mask. And it's like, really? And like Luke's like, I'm not about to do that, which is funny. Like Foggy was the most against Matt doing the whole mass vigilante thing. But I guess in Luke's case, it's a little different because at least Matt would get hurt. At least in Luke's case, he's bulletproof. Like no one can really hurt him. Obviously, there are exceptions. But I thought that's kind of nice. Even like moments where it's like, Foggy be like, whoa, is that Ghostface Killer? It's like, yeah, Method Man wrote a song about me, so we hang out from time to time. And he's like, I gotta get me some superpowers. That's the only time we see Foggy. Obviously, things kind of go down. I also love Piranha, too. It's sad what happened to Piranha, but it's just kind of like, I know I'm bouncing all over the place, but I do it because Piranha being he's such a hyperactive dude, and just kind of like, he's just like on top of the world, like, yeah. He's just so, it's actually kind of sad when you kind of learn about his background and stuff, like his dad just kind of pushing him away. And his mom, because his mom was one of Mama Mabel's girls, and his dad was a recurring customer. But when time came when she got pregnant, he bounced. But when things kind of fell apart, because he tried to go to his dad a lot, but his dad just kind of sent him away. But when time came, he came to his son like, hands extended, asking for help, but he turned him away. I don't remember if it ever comes up. I know it's mentioned, and I know Luke brings it up, Piranha's mom. I don't think it was ever a situation of like, you actually get to see her in the show. I don't think so. I think she was referenced. I don't think you ever actually get to see her, so. It's a lot of depth in this season. To be fair, there's a lot of depth in season 1 as well, so. I'm trying to think. In retrospect, like, I feel like out of any show, Iron Fist has the least amount of depth. Maybe that's just me. Maybe Daredevil as well, like not including the Punisher stuff, because that's not. I feel like Jessica Jones is kind of up there. I feel like Luke Cage might potentially have it. Once again, not counting any Punisher stuff, whether it be season 2 of Daredevil or just the Punisher in itself. Just don't count that. So I don't know. It's just kind of interesting to think about. Nevertheless, getting back to on topic if I can, because I'm going to be all over the place. But the whole thing about, really quickly, Bushmaster, his whole deal about his whole situation, I felt when looking at the trailer, it was like, it seemed like it was more supernatural rather than it was science fiction. Because even like his wounds and stuff like that. So it seems like it is a situation of he kind of has a similar thing to Luke because of the nightshade initially kind of hardening his skin. It's not to the point that bullets bounce off of him, which I feel like this season, didn't Luke ricochet bullets a lot more? I feel like he never did that. Like, I guess it's like a bullet's coming his way. He knocks it, away, like, and knocks it back at people. It's such an interesting thing. I feel like he never really did that before. So, but, he's got harder skin and he's just tougher and faster naturally. Nightshade as they say, Nightshade doesn't kind of awaken it. It doesn't heal you or anything. It reveals what was already there. So like obviously like Bushmaster Johnny was always special, like obviously because he was the only one that survived that shot. All the other kids died, but he survived. So it was already there. I guess it's just one of those things, like he had special abilities to begin with and they were just latent, but the Nightshade kind of revealed them. So the Nightshade make it, like I said, it amplifies what's already there for him anyway. So it makes him stronger, but it's slowly killing him. So he's got crazy reflexes. I didn't really realize that during the trailers. I didn't feel like I really captured it, but this, like his movements and stuff like that, I'm even surprised too, because I feel like before when he fought, I felt like he was a lot more stiffer than what he is. He actually kind of got some decent moves, like when it comes to fighting, like I don't know. It just seemed, I guess it's just because I assume just because he is a bigger brawler type of dude, I felt like he wouldn't be as nimble. It's just, I don't know. He's more nimble than I would give him credit for, which I think is kind of an interesting thing to his fighting style and stuff like that. But definitely in Johnny's case of him being like very like able to move around, kind of twist around you and kind of get the upper hand, catch you off guard like that. He's, like I said, he's definitely on a much more nimble side than Luke. So, like I said, it's just kind of sad because even he admits, he's like, when it's all said and done, him and Luke could have been brothers and if things were different. Because initially he wanted to take Luke out of the picture because it's like, yo, two kings can't run Harlem. And it's like, yo, it's his birthright. Like, Harlem isn't in Luke. But I mean, he loves the place, but it's not his birthright like it is Johnny, especially just because after everything Johnny lost, I also like the fact it's kind of going along with the Stokes family situation, like that. Like we aren't completely done with the Stokes family's past. I don't think you ever will be because it is so heavily intertwined with Harlem's history that it's never going to be done. Obviously, we see like what led to all of this, like Mama Mabel and the others, like killing, like what went down between Johnny's dad and Buggy, them both basically killing each other. Granted, it took Buggy like 5 months later to die. But that and the whole like, the rum business and the club business kind of wanted that to be split down the middle, but like obviously the Stokes kind of try to take it all for their own. That being Mama Mabel and Pete. So then killing Johnny's mom, Gwen, even trying to kill Pete actually shot him and was like, yeah, when you see his dad Quincy in hell, tell him that's for Buggy. Just bad blood runs deep through that family. So I was actually surprised how he walks away from this season. Wasn't expecting that, especially when he took that entire syringe like Tilda told him not to. And it's like he got super, which also like, was that the first time he's ever dodged a bullet? That was crazy. Like, Shade shot him and he like dodged a bullet at last second. I was like, wow. I mean, like, I guess everything about him got enhanced, like doubled. So, I love that moment just in that little room of him duking it out with Luke, Misty, even, Shade's kind of stepping in there too. Like all of them kind of brawling it out like that. I thought it was kind of pretty neat. But the fact is, I was halfway expecting to be like a big climactic showdown, which I guess you can make the argument that was the big climactic showdown, but it wasn't like an utter defeat. It was kind of more like a draw because he got away. But I thought it was going to be like, oh, he's going to be broken, he's going to die, he's going to go crazy, and Luke's going to have to put him down. But the fact is, Luke had a chance to, but didn't. And I guess in the end, it kind of worked out in the end because it's like, it seems like he goes back home after everything kind of went down. So I know, like I said, I know I'm skipping all over the place, but I wasn't expecting that. So he's not dead. He's actually still out there and alive and well. I mean, not alive and well because he's kind of on the end anyway, because his body's like mad messed up for all the nightshade he's ingested. So, I mean, he might not be a threat anymore. Besides, he probably has no intentions of ever coming back because he kind of got what he wanted in the long run anyway. So I don't know. It's just kind of interesting. Like I said, I wasn't expecting him. So he might be a character where it's like I said, he was in this weird position where he is the villain of the season. And I think that's something I want to focus on too. The fact of the matter is, like, I thought he was going to be like the main focus, and maybe Shades and Mariah might be kind of a side thing too. It's like, no, those storylines were so heavily intertwined. They kind of went hand in hand. They heavily influenced one another because obviously Harlem kind of got caught in the back and forth between the two. Especially what happened at Gwen's, that was brutal. Because even Shades was like, what the hell are you doing? And that kind of caught me by surprise. Even Shades calling you out for being a little crazy with that, Mariah. Because I love what they did with Shades and Mariah this season. The whole situation of like Mariah trying to clean up the name because she wanted to go legit. She wanted to leave all this gangster stuff behind. But Shades is like, no. You can go a little legit, but like, yo, let's keep this like gangster shit keep going because it's like we're making a killing off of it, you know? So, and that in itself would basically lay out the dominoes that would fall for the rest of the season, kind of leading to things being where they are. Obviously, the other gangs. I feel like this and Daredevil are the only shows that have kind of really introduced like not just like big main villains, but also smaller tier villains, that being the other gangs and stuff like that. I mean, I guess like, cause they're the most crime centric of the ones. Like they're the most that deal with the most heavily crime drama stuff of like, oh yeah, like we're dealing with gangs and stuff like that. And I guess like when you look at the story of Luke Cage, it's like, well, it makes the most sense. Besides, out of any show, I feel like it is the most like a crime drama, like a police crime drama you'd find like, you know, like a NY, Undercover or something like that, you know, got them, but maybe you could make the argument kind of all, and I'll leave it at that as a comparison. So it's got that kind of feel and vibe to it, especially like I said this back when season 1, I remember that specifically. Well, at least I think I did, about the opening kind of feeling like that, but nevertheless. But Mariah's striving so hard to try to legitimize business. She's putting in all this money. She put it in she got 20 mil. She puts that in, gets a whole bunch back, and wants to use that to start over. Her and Shades run away, but Shades like, nah, I don't want that. Give me Harlem's Paradise and stuff like I love that the back and forth between them. Like there's like love, then there's hate, there's love, and then like trust and distrust. There's the whole Kamachi situation, Darius. That took me by surprise, just in the sense of like, well, multiple things. One, I kind of had this inkling, but I didn't know it was about Shades, like the whole like look of contempt he had. I thought it was because maybe on some level he had a thing for Mariah himself. It's like, no, it was all about Shades. Like him and Shades had a thing back in Seagate. I think specifically Seagate. But it's like the moment they're out there free and everything, like Shades kind of pretends like it didn't happen because it's like, yo, what happens in prison stays in prison. But you can tell for Darius, it didn't mean, because for him, it's like they were already close to begin with. They've known each other since they were much, much younger. And I think, being in that situation, kind of going through the hard times they did, like they needed each other. So, but that's why he kept looking at Mariah with such contempt, why he was always a little snappy and had like funny remarks towards her. It's like, oh, that's why, because on some level he was jealous. That just kind of took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting that, but that was kind of an interesting twist. But also the fact is him working with Rittenhauer, which that storyline's kind of sad the way it did. Especially because him and Misty bumped heads, especially because it's like, oh, like he wanted to cut her a deal, like cut Mariah a deal, give her less time, but then later on Misty literally is in that same predicament where it's like, oh, but this time we're giving her full immunity. I gave him so much shit and he died. Shade set the whole thing up. Shade, I think the show does a very good job of showing that Shade is very good at setting people up. He did the whole situation with Luke, framing him for Cornell's murder, then obviously setting everything up for Rittenhauer and Darius, kind of playing out the way it did. So, like I said, it's just that situation of Mariah kind of dealing with the whole identity situation because she's trying to be a dealer. All the while, you even have like Johnny, Bushmaster, constantly referring to her as like, no, you're Mariah Stokes. Then there's the whole Tilda situation, which I didn't remember her referencing. I mean, to be fair, it's been a couple months since I rewatched season 1, so maybe I'm not remember. I don't really remember her bringing up the whole Tilda situation. Like her and Tilda haven't always been on the best of terms. They haven't been around each other a lot of Tilda's life. It never like legitimately pieced together in my mind that like I didn't put two and two together because like I was like the way she was talking, I was under the impression like, oh, it must be like Rittenhauer like must be her dad or something. I thought that was going to be like the twist or something. It's like, no, her dad was Mariah's Uncle Pete. I was like, oh man, it's like we remember that being a theme from season 1, but I didn't put two and two together to think that was a thing. And it's so sad because for Tilda, it's like her and her mom, it's like, oh, we kind of had a bad relationship. But Tilda came into this being like, yo, she thought the Stokes were dead as like Mariah as a dealer. Like, hey, maybe things would be different. And then she finds out her mom hates her guts because every time she looks at her, all she can do is see Pete's face. And it's like, I tried to love you, but I can't. Like, I can't never love you. I never have, and I never will. And it's like, that is some brutal, harsh crap. And I think that kind of does, it's kind of interesting, especially when compare and contrast that to Mariah and Tilda's stories are kind of like mirror images because you have Mariah trying to fight her nature of being a Stokes, like, but eventually she kind of gives into it because she's like, I'm done with this trying to like this whole thing of like, yeah, I'm gonna still be the businesswoman I am, but I'm leaning more into this gangster thing. I'm realizing who I am. I am a Stoke. That's who I am. Where Tilda kind of does too, but she's fought it for so long. She's on the opposite end of like I say opposite sides of the mirror, but more so like they are kind of in the exact same situation because both try to deny the Stoke side of themselves. But now it's like no matter what you do, that's in your DNA that there might not be any getting away from it. Even Tilda's situation, like we don't like, especially going as far as she did, like obviously I'm skipping around, but like killing Mariah, like that took a lot. Hell, she was even going to get Bushmaster to do it. I mean, the fact is he wanted to do it anyway. But in our mind, it's one of those situations of like, yeah, my mom needs to be taken out because my mom's super evil. Like she's causing all this crime all over the place. The fact of the matter is Harlem will never be safe because it's like if you let her go, which is a big complaint Luke had about himself because he let like Mariah go and that led to her doing the whole Gwen's massacre place, that whole situation. I even felt bad for Johnny's uncle, like going out like that, burning him alive, and then finally shooting him just because he's making too much noise. Because it was legit. It's interesting because this was a situation where I was like, I don't know if Mariah will ever actually pay for anything. Because it's always kind of like, oh, we're taking steps forward to be, oh, never mind, everything is kind of undone. So that was kind of interesting. I also appreciate they brought Alex back in more of a bigger, like obviously, like he started his criminal side of things last season, kind of helping her out more criminal side of things. But you see him kind of embrace it even more this season, which is kind of interesting. Wasn't kind of expecting that. But also there's a whole, like, going back to Shade's situation, like, it's kind of sad, like, the moment he killed Darius, nothing was right. Like, Shade's changed after that. Because even him, like, even with the way things are handled, like, even he has his own code about how things should be handled in the street, and that's why he's like, what Mariah did was crossing the line, killing all those innocent people. Which she did bring up a good point of, like, well, what about Candace? For him, it's like, oh, the moment Candace said that money, she was guilty, and the moment she snitched, I did that for you. So I guess that's a different thing, because it's like they were trying to use the uncle as leverage to bring, kind of as a hostage, to be like, yo, we got your uncle, come out, John, Bush, master. So that's kind of like, but that's not how he handles things. But it's so interesting because when it was all time for, like, oh yeah, give all your details, Shades, about everything he's done, he breaks everything down, from everything from Seagate to all the stuff that went down in season 1. But the moment he got to what went down at Gwen's, he kind of starts choking up, because even the Candace stuff, he's like, ha ha ha, he's smiling, he's laughing, he's getting into it because he knows it's pissing Misty off. But the moment he gets to what went down in Gwen's, he starts choking up a little bit. It's like, that's weird, you being kind of emotional like that. To be fair, he's emotional all season. I almost completely forgot, like, even in the first episode, they're at that restaurant, and the guy's like, oh, the waiter's like, oh yeah, you're here with your aunt? And then you have Shades looking at him like, what the hell did you just say? And then Mariah's like, oh, who cares what they say? Which, him and Darius beat the crap out of that guy later on. That's so sad that things kind of played out like that. He even killed Arturo because it was like Arturo was running his mouth about, Mariah, which is crazy to think about. Like, it ain't just like Mariah ain't just like some side piece or anything like that, or like, oh, a means to an end. It's like, nah, boy, Shades was in love, that's proved by the fact is he did each and everything he did for her, covering up the whole Cottonmouth situation last season up to, like, everything he was doing this, everything was for her sake. And once again, it's kind of interesting considering all the, like, trust and distrust that they went through over the course of the season was kind of an interesting thing as well. So I thought that was kind of interesting. He ended up ultimately selling Mariah out when he gave Misty the gun that was connected to so many murders. It is kind of interesting that even he didn't know about the Pete situation. I mean, I guess that's not something they probably talk about, so why would you? So, kind of going back to what I was bringing up earlier about the whole Tilda situation. Well, kind of, like, it's kind of sad because, like, on some level, there was a part of me that, like, oh, maybe she, because I was, like, obviously, Tilda was more so, like, a publicity thing. Obviously, that was suggested to her, but I was like, oh, maybe she is legit. Well, she's trying to go legitimate and everything, so she is trying to make things better with her daughter. So I was like, oh, maybe this is, but it's like, nope, like, that it kind of, like, all that stuff earlier in the season kind of gets thrown out the bus when you're like, oh, so that means you never really cared about her. Maybe on some level you do, because it's like, no, she's still partly you. I mean, hell, she even said it. I forgot. She was like, yeah, I never wanted you. And it's like, oh, it's just because Mama Mabel was like, no abortions. So that's why that happened. It's like, ooh, that's rough. Which, she went through some terrible stuff. Don't get me wrong. That doesn't justify, Mariah being just kind of a monster, just trying to break her daughter just to kind of snap back at her, but also just kind of being just a terrible, evil person that she was naturally. So I also love that Sugar ended up coming back and kind of being a surprise character. At first, it's kind of like, oh man, maybe he's going legit. And then there's a whole, like, Luke scratches his truck. You're like, what the hell is wrong with you, man? Something wrong with you. Why would you do that? And then, obviously, he sells Luke out later on. And then he starts running with Shades and Mariah again. But before that whole Gwen thing went down, he was like, nah. So he starts working with Luke, which kind of like, yo, he's kind of got, like, his little criminal sidekick. I guess it's kind of like almost like a CI situation he's got going on. So I thought that was kind of pretty neat. That kind of took me hella by surprise. I mean, he's also a different person too. He's got a girl, like, he's married and he's got a kid now, so things kind of put in different perspective for him. So I think that's kind of interesting because he's kind of like Luke's advisor going forward and stuff like that. So I just think that's kind of an interesting look for him. I kind of talked about it a little bit, but not really outright explicitly. I feel like this season was probably bloodier than last season. I kind of feel like, especially like Bushmaster's first introduction in the beginning of the first episode when he grabs Nigel, slides a blade across like the top part of his face where his eyes is. It's kind of interesting because he tries to do the same thing to Luke later on, but it doesn't work out for him like that. Plus, they're decapitating people. That was kind of interesting too. Well, I'll circle back to it, but the whole like when Misty was trying to frame Cockroach and ended up stumbling across his body, so that was kind of interesting. Kind of going to Misty is the whole situation. Bailey, that kind of took me by surprise because I thought in my head Bailey was just like the tech dude. I don't remember him having like big parts last season. It feels like obviously he's a lot more prominent this season because him and Nandi are kind of like the Scarf and Misty of the group, which I guess kind of comes true even more so later on because it's like, oh, at first I'm like, oh, Nandi, oh man, I was like, oh man, she's kind of an asshole, isn't she? She's starting shit with like Misty, she's all competitive and stuff. I'm like, man, why are you so mean spirited? Why are you so hateful like that? I kind of had a feeling like I ended up knowing like her justification for why she ended up like, because later on it's like, oh, you're actually kind of a good cop, you're actually kind of a good person when times get tough and stuff like that. But the moment she heard about like the immunity deal for Mariah, she was like, nah. After all that Mariah had done, like for her it was like, oh, Ridenour situation, that's kind of what set her off. She's like, yeah, but the fact of the matter is, like, Mariah needs to pay. She shouldn't be able to get off scot-free. It's like, you literally feel the same way, you know. Misty does. Misty hates her with a passion. And, you know, and I think that speaks volumes because the fact is, if Misty is all for giving her this deal, even though she's not all for it, like, even though she has hesitation, and that's something even Priscilla was talking about. She's like, the fact of the matter is you learning how to play the game and understanding, like, what sacrifices have to be made to get stuff done. Which really quickly, I thought that was kind of a neat line from Priscilla being like, oh yeah, like, because she's higher up, she's the deputy chief and everything, she got a briefing on what actually went down in Midland Circle. Everything exactly? I don't know. They're still like, I don't know if everyone knows, like, what exactly went down, like... The only ones that know are the ones there. I mean, because even some of the ones there still will never know the truth. The only ones who will are obviously Claire, Colleen, Danny, Jessica, and Luke. But nevertheless, but her justification for that being the case is like, oh, why? Well, needs to go down, needs to happen anyway. Why don't I make a little money off the side of it? But I love that, like, Misty calls her out on it. It's like, you up here trying to give your lame justification because the fact of the matter is, like, our blood, if, like, things went sideways, we could have died because of you. We would have had our blood on your hands, and you up here, you're not even taking responsibility for it. Hell, you probably never will. And you see that it does bother her. I also love that Misty kind of kicked her ass when she tried to run away. Like I said, she, like, Nandi tried to act like she was, like, queen of everything, and just like Misty took it in. I'm like, yeah. She's like, stand up and take this ass whooping. I was like, yo, you know, Misty was sitting on that for a while, dude. I kind of wonder will we see her pop up later on as a villain or something like that. Maybe she's just kind of like, oh, she's a dirty cop going to jail. I kind of wonder will that turn into anything in the future? Probably not. Just kind of, it is what it is. It is kind of sad just because it's like a repeat. And I thought that was kind of a nice touch this season because obviously, like, she learned a lot about obviously Scarf being dirty last season. But now because like even like other cases, like 30 other cases with Scarf, like kind of got like people released, and now she looking back as like, oh, Cockroach, yeah, he's a terrible person, he's done all that terrible stuff, but the thing in particular that Scarf was like, yo, like, oh, the gun and stuff, like, it probably was planned on him, made him go like, so yeah, some of the people we locked up might have been bad, but what about the people that Scarf might have framed? It's like, she thought it was just with Cottonmouth, like, okay, that's as long as he's been working, but it's like, nah, well, Scarf's been dirty a lot longer. Seems like that was the case, because even later on, because obviously you compare the whole like Earl situation happening, you actually get the experience now where it's like he's saying like, oh, it's my fault, like God's punishing him, and like obviously at the time, just because Missy wasn't willing to see it, like she just thought, no, you're a good cop and everything, but it's like, no, it was him being like, no, I'm a dirty cop, I'm a terrible person, this all happened because God wanted to punish me for being a dirty cop. Hell, even at one point he suggested that him and Misty plant evidence on somebody, but then he was quick like, no, it's a joke, ha, yeah, do all the good stuff I taught you. It's just kind of interesting. Like I said, she was going to go through with it, but she stopped. So I was wondering what they were going to do with Misty, whether she was going to go full vigilante, but it's like, nah, she goes back to her job. Because no matter what, that badge means a lot to her. Like, what, not just like, oh, like the prestige and blah, 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 because she got the Purple Heart and everything like that, but she didn't care for, because she doesn't want pity. She doesn't want to be kind of put up on a pedestal. She doesn't want to be the poster child. She just wants to do her job. She wants to help people. She wants to protect the city, Harlem, the place she loves, the place she calls home. That's all she wants to do. But I was curious, like, whether she was going to, like, go on full Luke Cage, like, which she does for a little while, which, obviously, once again, her and Luke can. I feel like maybe it's because she's been training with Colleen more, but it's like, yo, like, Missy was kicking ass this season, dude. Like, she got moves. Like, I feel like she never really got hand-to-hand stuff like last season. She definitely got it this season. Like I said, so, like, I feel like she wasn't really trained like that, but I guess Colleen kind of taught her, which obviously I haven't even talked about it yet, which shame on me. The whole bionic arm thing's pretty freaking dope. I was watching Sci-Fi earlier, and it was just a little clip of the actress who plays Simone, the actress who plays Misty, being like, yeah, she's been waiting for this, because I know that is a big part of Misty's story in the comic books. I wonder, like, how big of her story, like, is it something like that happens pretty early on in her story? I mean, obviously, once again, it's probably depending on what run of the comic books you read, but I wonder, like, is that something she's always kind of had, or is that something that happened much later in, like, her creation cycle, in a sense of, like, oh, the character was around for a while, and then they were like, how about we give her cybernetic arm? That's pretty dope. But I'm also curious to see what they do going forward, like, with Misty, in the sense of, like, her career path, in the sense of potentially what she could be later on, not just being, you know, a detective. She could eventually kind of take over, you know, as kind of captain, because that's what Priscilla is like, yeah, I'm only handling this stuff for, like, right now. Eventually I'll pass on to you, potentially, because it's like, oh, Missy's shown herself to be really good. I also like that, you know, Missy does her recreation things, and obviously it was a little wonky this season just because she herself was kind of out of focus, so everything else she was trying to see was out of focus. She's still very good at what she does, but still. Also, really quickly, I completely skimmed over, and it's actually a pretty big thing. It's like, Judas bullets don't work on Luke anymore. That was kind of interesting, because in retrospect, I'm like, right, he never actually got shot with Judas bullets like the rest of after he got shot by Diamondback. Like, he never got shot again by the Judas bullets. So, but it's like, it's going through the experiment again, rehardened his, kind of almost gave his skin like another layer, I guess. So Judas bullets didn't do anything to him. I thought that was kind of like a nice, interesting twist. We also got introduced to his dad, played by Reggie E. Is it Kathy? Which, R.I.P. I had no idea until, like, the end of the season. I thought it was kind of interesting. Like, he didn't, like, I thought that's just storyline wise why they did that, but it's like, no, he didn't pop up for a lot of seasons. I mean, to be fair, Claire wasn't in a lot of the season. I mean, who's to say, like, maybe Rosario Dawson kind of had a conflicting schedule at the time of this. Like I said, I thought this was going to be a bigger part of the season, but it turns out not to be the case. I mean, she's mentioned at the end of the season. We don't actually see her, but she's mentioned. Which, there's also a twist in my part of my brain that's kind of like, yeah, because I'm weird and I'm me. I'm like, oh, but does this mean there's like, oh, there's a, well, he cares for Claire and Claire loves him, but at the same time, there's a part of me that's like, oh, but doesn't that mean there's kind of a whole you and Jessica thing? Once again, I keep throwing that out there. Who knows if that's ever going to be a thing? I'm probably going to keep pushing for something that they may never push for. It's just because, like I said, legitimate. It's just in the stupid part of my mind where it's like, I know they're like, I don't know if they're like happy. I assume they have children, they're married and stuff, but I know Jessica and Luke are a big thing in the comic book, so it just, to me, it's kind of like, oh yeah, that's kind of set in stone. So to me, every other relationship they have is like, it's never going to last because you and Luke are going to get together. But at the same time, like I said, it's just, who knows? They may never do the Jessica and Luke situation. So, I mean, well, again, and make it more proper and stick. I mean, especially with their complicated past, that's going, and that'd be hard to go by. And that was kind of something interesting too, really quickly, was kind of like Luke's biggest problem, why he was the most angry at his dad, was because, like, for him, it's like his dad's lies led to Willis being as mad as him, coming after him, framing him, going to Seagate, meeting Reva, eventually getting his powers. That led to Reva eventually getting caught up with the Kilgrave situation, then her dying, and now it's like so many other people died. Like Candace died, so much bad stuff, and for him, he feels like it could have all been undone if his dad had just told the truth all those years ago, you know? So, but I did like, there was that moment earlier in the season I thought was kind of nice where Claire went to visit him and she kept using the name Luther. I kind of rewound it because I was like, wait, what? As the fact that she was like, yeah, I love Luke. And it caught his attention, but he doesn't say anything. So even though him and Luke kind of butt heads at the beginning and kind of bits here and there, they do eventually find common ground again. Like they do apologize because they spent so much time angry at each other. Like, which Luke was right to be mad at his dad, but his dad was frustrated too. The woman he loves was dying and he was kind of lashing out at Lucas, telling him, it's like, oh man, well, Carl being like, Carl, this is all your fault that your mom is sick and that she died, like kind of making that all on him. But it's like, yeah, his father had sins too. I wasn't expecting that when we first got introduced to him of like, oh, it's like, oh man, he's going to try and besmirch our hero's name, Luke's name. But it's like, oh man, turns out it's like, no, that's your dad, which kind of makes him kind of sticking that knife, I know, the proverbial knife, because a physical knife wouldn't be the case, but the proverbial knife even deeper into you, which is kind of like oh, that's super messed up. But like I say, in the end, they found their way to each other, like, made each other realize how much they love each other. And I don't know, it felt good. I think that was one less bit of anger that Luke still had in him. Obviously, there was still the turmoil with just handling everything else, like everything else being his responsibility, dealing with the whole Mariah situation, the back and forth. One step in one direction, kind of being pulled in another, that whole complicated situation. So I am curious to see if that Nightshade situation with Bushmaster kind of comes back or not. It seems like he's the only one that really utilizes it. I mean, I'm sure other people can too, but because he was already special to begin with, it was no longer an issue. So I'm just curious, will that ever pop back up in the storyline? Maybe with Tilda, if she continues to do the medicine type of thing, I'd assume she would. But I mean, we'll have to wait and see what she would potentially have to do with that. Also, really quickly, I want to make a side note of this. There was this thing I had it never came up, at least not I really recall in anything. But the fact is that in Harlem, it's like, well, there was this whole thing of like, it's actually a federal crime to own any medals, like anything from the incident, because there's like Judas bullets are considered dangerous now, I guess, because Luke has been everything's good now. So, but they're having them. Well, to be fair, it was kind of a government regulated thing. Like police were being issued them last season, so that was why it wasn't as much of an issue. But anyone that has anything related to the incident will be federally charged, which is kind of interesting to me. I was like, oh, holy crap. Once again, the Judas bullets don't play that big of a role this season because it's kind of, once again, I think it's one of those writing things where it's like, oh, we had fun with it but now we've kind of made things kind of like, well, like I said, it was kind of set up in season 1. They probably never utilized it till this season. But the fact is that Judas bullets don't work on him. He never had, like, it's not till at the beginning he's like, oh, holy crap, that didn't work. I was like, oh, because at first I was like, oh, were those fake Judas bullets? It's like, nope, they're the real deal. They just don't work anymore. One moment I think is probably one of the craziest moments in this season was like, well, for one, like I said, the Bushmaster situation was kind of dealt with a lot because it's like, yeah, the final episode of season 2 wasn't really about him. It was kind of mostly about Mariah and just kind of how everything kind of went to hell. But like, I wasn't expecting that to kind of be the ending. Like Mariah cleaning house, killing everyone that has any association with her, just can't take any chances. That even included Alex, which is like, wow, you like the kid. He helped you out so much. He's always by your side, and you you successfully killed him and everyone else in your organization just to make sure that you can make it so that, it's all about perception and everything, and make it so that there was no one left to corroborate anything that Shade said or Shades himself, had said. I think that's probably like one of the most cold-blooded things that Mariah has done, which is interesting considering the fact that she's done a lot of cold-blooded stuff. I thought it was kind of that neat, that little scene where she kind of was losing her mind a little bit, going back and forth between Mama Mabel and Pete about everything. Obviously, that was just kind of her inner turmoil. Because it's so interesting, because that's at the time where it's like, oh, she's kind of stepped up and everything, but she was still kind of like driving herself a little insane, because I think there's still kind of like those inner demons kind of tugging at her at the time. So, because she seemed like she was just all for being like, yo, I'm hardcore now. Like, I'm Mariah Stokes. This is me. I'm a handle business type of lady. So like I said, that whole Tilda situation, I had a feeling because the way Tilda was mixing stuff, the moment I was like, she killed you the moment she kissed you, didn't? But like nothing happened, so I was like, is that like a heavy ass delay? It turns out to be the case. I I wasn't expecting the whole Luke talking to her situation. I thought that was kind of a neat thing this season too. That Mariah's kind of like, yo, you kind of complete me. They kind of almost like, what's kind of the best comparison? I know this is a DC comparison, but it was almost kind of like a Batman and Joker type of thing. And they're like, oh, you kind of make me. It's like, if it wasn't for you, like I wouldn't be where I am. Like the fact of the matter is, like you like got so caught up with Cornell became so obsessed with you, and that led to our situation, so kind of almost being like, what was that line she said, that the fact is that they're responsible for each other, and then like Luke is like, bitch, please. And I was like, and he's like, sorry, no offense. And she's like, none taken. I thought that was kind of like weird that like, and I think that was kind of a good thing, amazing thing about this season too, is the fact is that enemies turned allies, like / still enemies, like the complicated relationship between Luke and Mariah this entire season, and going back and forth of like, oh man, he's helping out Tilda, he's keeping Piranha alive, so he's inadvertently helping her, because even she's like, I don't know how to feel about this. Literally, the man I hate, the man who like despises me, is literally the only person I can trust to get stuff done, like to protect her interest. Obviously that's not his main goal, but it inadvertently happens like that. So I thought that was kind of pretty neat. Even in the end, she dies in his arms and everything, and she thanks him and stuff like that. It's like, yo, things taking a crazy twist. Then you've got like the whole Carbone situation and Luke becoming like a crime boss at the end. Once again, the twist I did see, I was like, yo, like I was like, oh, his journey to be a hero. But I think it's that situation of, there are moments where a hero kind of like, it's that hard situation of like, is he compromising everything that he is and what he stands for, or is he playing the role that no one else can, that he has to be the one because they can't let anyone else take that spot, can't take that throne. Like Sheldon shows up at the end and is like, he's fine with Luke being the one to take over. Mariah's fine with it too. So it's kind of like, he has to be the king that kind of sets things right, because if he doesn't take that spot, someone else will. But even DW is like, man, don't do things like this. Like it can't be this way. But for him, it's like, for Luke, it's like, I have to do this. Someone has to take this role. Like, I guess they have to be there to exist to bring that balance, because with Mariah gone, like things kind of went out of control. Other people stepped into the territory. At the very least, with him on top, people will be reluctant to step forward, because he kept, I guess it kind of circles back to the beginning of the season where it's like using fear and stuff like that, but also just, I don't know. I'm so curious to see what that would mean going forward. It's something that even Mariah kind of talks about. The fact is that he thinks by keeping that high position that he can see everything and kind of like not worry about, kind of keep himself like in check being there. But it's like, no, she's like, even being who he is, it will change him. In what way? I don't know. Will it make him a better hero? Will it turn into him a villain? Like that's the whole thing. Even him and DW don't even see the same way anymore, because he's like, yo, if you're gonna be a crime boss and stuff like that, you can come here, get your hair cut, but it's like it ends there. Like we're gonna go back to this being Pop's place, being Switzerland. And like Luke is like not gonna fight him on. He's like, no, what? You're right. I understand. I can't fight you on that. So even this means him and Misty might be on opposite sides, because it's like, yo, I handle things on a more non-official side. You handle things on a more law enforcement side. But she's like, but what about the law? It's like, for him, it's like, but when has the law really ever helped? Does it kind of screw both of them over? But in the end, it's kind of like, like Missy's there to kind of keep him in line, which he's fine with. But at the same time, it's like, well, yeah, Missy might be able, well, she's got the cyber arm, so that might help. But it's like, can no one really touch you? That's kind of what puts you in that position of like, you're ruling as a king and there's no one around to kind of dethrone you. So like I say, it's just an interesting thing to see him in that position. Like, what will he do? And it's something his dad says. It's kind of the final words of the season too, and I thought were beautiful words. It's kind of like, when it's all said and done, when the heaviness when the pressure is on and the pressure is at its heaviest, when it kind of lets up, is kind of, that's the real magic. Like basically when the pressure's on and when it's at its heaviest, who you show yourself to be, that's when you're able to kind of like, that's when the trueness of a person comes out. It's kind of the whole conversation that gets brought up earlier in the season. I forgot who said it exactly, but it's like, character is who you are when no one's watching, so like I said, it's just interesting seeing like him kind of go from hero to like potential criminal boss, but it is more so to kind of keep everything in line. Like obviously he made a deal where it's like, yo, like Carbone and anyone else, it's like you and everyone else, like you can keep running your things prior other places, but from here to here in Harlem is mine. There's a giant cage around it, and I protect it. Even broke that one dude's fingers one by one just to prove her a point. So, like I said, it's kind of, like I said, in the end, like when it's all said and done, like his foundation is still not as strong as it was, because it doesn't even have DW, no matter how, like, how much he tried to take advantage of Luke's situation. But he was like, nah, man, like that's what friends are for. They gonna show you what you ain't really wanting to see, type of thing. Plus Claire, which obviously she's trying to reach out. You can kind of tell by the end of the season. Like I said, we don't see her, but we hear her about her. Misty's there, Ridley's there. We even see Tilda, which I love that whole thing about Tilda being excited. It's like, oh, I get Cornell's piano and stuff like that. It's like, yeah. And it's like, Luke Cage, you get Harlem's Paradise, you own it. She got pissed, dude. It's like, what do you expect? Your mom, you killed your mom. But I guess it's just, in her mind, it's just kind of like a beyond the grave, a final middle finger from her mom, because it's like, yeah, this is mine. Well, even though she's not recognizing herself as a Dillard or a Stoke, she recognizes herself as a Johnson, the family that raised her and took her in, like Mama Mabel dropped her off to. So, because even though that family knew her whole deal, what she was really all about, her situation with Mariah and Pete, the fact of the matter is they still loved her wholeheartedly. They showed her how to love. So, like I said, that's why I'm so interested into what that might turn out to be in the future. I don't know. Like, I kind of get the feeling that she's going to go down the path of her mom, but it's like, nope. It's because I was like, oh, we're going to end with a Stokes on top, but it's like, nope. And once again, she said it herself, is like the last Stoke technically died. Like Mariah kind of embraced it, but Tilda isn't. So I'm interested to see where her story goes. I mean, like I said, once again, I cannot stress this enough. A fantastic season. Like, it got me super hyped all the way through. The fact of the matter is, at the time of me recording this, I don't know if this is getting renewed for a third season. I'm really hoping so. I would assume so, maybe. But like I said, I don't really know. There's a whole Netflix metrics thing about like how that situation goes about. But I'm really hoping it's renewed for a third season, because I'd love to see what they would do with this. Like, the fact of the matter is, like, once again, the whole him and Jessica situation, whether it be any crossover between that again. The fact is that, where does him and Claire stand? Obviously, that once again, it's like we hinted at it, but like the whole Heroes for Hire, I mean, maybe that might play a role in Iron Fist, maybe not. Because I thought in the end, that's what Luke was going to do. He's going to call it quits, and then like oh, he got offered Harlem's Paradise. It's like, nah, burn it down. And then what we're going to do is he opens up Hero. Like, he either goes back to Pop's shop, and he's like, oh, Heroes for Hire, try that out. Like, it's been hinted at, like, not just this season, but even last season. But that didn't end up happening. So, like I said, it might be something when it's all said and done that comes about. Because I think we're going to probably see another clash of, like, crime bosses potentially going forward, considering the fact there's all those other crime bosses, the ones that were introduced this season, the Carbone. I think she's probably someone that Luke's going to really butt heads with potentially in the future, just with territories and how things run. Like I said, it's just crazy to think about him being in that position, being like Luke Cage, and what does that mean? Like, I mean, I think as long as he keeps things safe inside of Harlem, maybe the people really won't care. I mean, Mariah would kind of like had that face of being like, oh, she cares about people and stuff like that, but it turns out she didn't, because she was trying to profit for herself. But like I said, maybe, she was always trying to clean away the bloodstains that were the Stoke family by embracing the Dillard side of her family. So maybe that, like, there was on some level, yes, it was selfish, but maybe on some level she really did care. I'd like to think she does, like, because it is the reason why her and Luke why she believes in giving it to Luke, because it's like, other than Luke, he's the only person that loves Harlem as much as Mariah does. And even in her own twisted way, she loves Harlem. Everything she did was for the purposes of making Harlem stronger. So she feels like Luke can do that. So also, you have Shades getting arrested at the end by Misty. Like, it didn't all work out 100% the way she wanted it to, but hey, Mariah's dead, the Queen is dead, so less issue to have to worry about with that, which is sad, because that means no Mariah ever in the future. But also the whole situation of, like, what does that mean for Shades? Because at the very least, she got justice for Candace and everything written out, because there was the like little twist of like, oh yeah, because Mariah was never convicted, which was all part of the deal. Like, Shades his deal got thrown out the window, so he got arrested for all the stuff that he confessed to. So curious to see what that ends up potentially being in the future, whether that's just kind of an open and shut case or not. Because like, and I didn't think, once again, just think about it in this moment, literally all of our villains have been wiped clean for this season. Because most everyone's villains. Like, the only one who still kind of has a villain still kind of left kicking around is Daredevil, and that's Wilson Fisk. But everyone else's main antagonists have all kind of been taken out. In case both of Jessica's, I mean, to a certain extent, the Kilgrave situation. All of Luke's, technically all of Danny's, depending on that whole hand situation. But yeah, definitely in Luke's case, because Mariah's gone, Shade's locked up. Once again, he can kind of get out. There's still that scientist. Like, I was surprised because I was thinking, like, maybe potentially that storyline could circle back around. It's the scientist who gave him his abilities. Because, you know, Claire had that worry at the beginning because she was like, oh yeah, worried about, but he was like, Luke was like, no, you made sure that no one could, like, that's why I was kind of wondering if that was going to end up being, Johnny, or rather, Bushmaster's whole deal, but it turned out not to be the case. But that's definitely a storyline that's still left open. Like, that was not tackled at all. Because the last time we saw him at the end of season 1, he was going into Diamondback's room. So maybe he turns Diamondback into something more. That was kind of one thing I wanted to, and I've talked about it in something else, kind of wanted Cottonmouth to come back in a certain regard. Because, just based on who Cottonmouth is in a comic book, I don't know if they necessarily do that. Like, even though the show is science fiction, they do keep it grounded to a certain extent. So that was always kind of like in the back of my mind of like, maybe they do that, but I feel like that might be a little too out there for a TV show. Like, it might be too much, and especially with what they're setting up, because yeah, things get crazy, a little supernatural and stuff like that, some magic, but it's never like too wild and crazy out there. I love that whole situation too, because it got me thinking about the whole Danny thing, about how, like, oh yeah, Danny's got the glowing fist. It's like, you literally are bulletproof, but when I talk about, the fact is, I talk about a dragon, you won't believe that? And he's like, hell no. It's just interesting how that all works out. So, like I said, I really hope that this does come back for a third season, because I'd be so interested to see, like, that, if any of that would kind of come back in season 3, like what direction the show would take, it'd be kind of interesting, especially where season 2 left us off, But I think really that's all I wanted to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good